Hi, you'll be pleased to know that my more produced video that I'm working on is going well, and it should be completed soon. I think it's very entertaining, and it's probably the silliest video that I've ever made. There's some crazy shit in there, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. This is just a somewhat off-the-cuff video about Sargon of Akkad versus Richard Carrier at MythCon on the topic of social justice. So I just watched this utter train wreck of a debate between Sargon of Akkad and Richard Carrier. Richard Carrier is an atheist, agnostic, skeptical scientist guy. To be perfectly honest, I don't know that much about him or his views. He was chosen by the MythCon guys to be the representative of social justice at the event, facing off against the titan of logic and reason, Sargon of Carl Benjamin. Some of you may know that Richard Carrier has been accused of being a bit of a sex pest at these events, and kind of harassing and being annoying to women. I don't know the truth of those situations. I don't really know anything about all of that, but I just wanted to acknowledge that that stuff exists. If people were thinking, is he gonna mention that? It could well be that Richard Carrier just doesn't know the boundaries of being around women. I have no idea. But this video is not about Richard Carrier, it's about Sargon of Akkad. So, let me just say that this was like one of the worst conversations and debates I've ever seen in my entire fucking life, and it just encapsulates everything atrocious, backwards, ignorant, and terrible about Sargon/Carl. It's safe to say that he's one of the stupidest fuckheads I've ever seen in the entire world. The entire thing is just him strawmanning, being a bully, being a just atrocious, horrible person, making everybody in the room and in the world uncomfortable and embarrassed. I already thought Sargon was stupid, but I didn't know he was this stupid. I have to say he's the worst debater I've ever seen in my entire life. Let me explain why. In this conversation, Richard Carrier is representing the social justice warriors, perhaps people like me, the horrible, disgusting, terrible people like me who are just a cancer and a stain on the face of everything, of the atheist community. We're destroying the world. We think everybody's racist, homophobic, and sexist. The entire point of our existence is to just be horrible and cry and destroy people's lives, etc. And in Sargon's mind, that was basically what Richard Carrier was there to defend. Sargon is of the belief that anybody who disagrees with him on the subject of social justice is basically the same person.
I think that the intersection between atheism and social justice is the same as the intersection between social justice and any other community that can possibly exist. It is an outright car crash, and everyone hates it, and they want you to go away. I don't think you're a sexual abuser, but they do.
Yeah,
How
right.
can you defend this?
Yeah, well, you're just repeating
No, I'm
the
asking
same...
you a question. How do you defend that? You
By
are,
pointing out...
by their standards,
I'm not defending
you are a
it.
bad person.
I just said I'm not defending that. That extremism exists, but you only focus on that. And that's a real
because
problem.
That's what's
we are
hurting
dealing
people.
Mm-hmm.
And this white woman literally got up and said, it's my job to shut white people down.
Yeah,
Defend that.
okay.
Defend it. Defend it.
I'm not going to defend that.
Exactly.
I've never heard that.
Exactly. And that is all of social justice in a nutshell. White
I
people are the
disagree.
problem
That's
and they
bad
have to be
social
stopped.
justice.
No, that's social justice full stop, right? And
Okay.
this comes from a distinctly
what if-
Marxian
what if
worldview.
we
No,
call
no,
it
no,
something
no,
else?
No,
I
we're
mean-
not calling it anything else because this is what we're dealing with, right?
Let's talk about a real problem, like abortion.
That is a real problem.
No. Yes, I agree.
That's why we're all here.
That's not what I meant. That's not
No,
what
but
I meant.
that's what I mean.
What I'm talking about are the actual problems in society that we should be working to solve.
We can't get there. You people are insufferable and we can't stand you.
Obviously not me. I am clearly a disproof of your point.
You're defending them.
I'm
Why are
not
you defending
them? I've actually said to you multiple times
well
on
then-
stage that I don't defend the extremists that you're
Yeah, but
talking
you
about.
can't sit
I
there
am an actual example, a counterexample
Yes,
to your
but
generalization
and you are-
that we have these extremists. They do exist. It is
And
a
if
problem,
you-
and I think criticizing them is legitimate.
Okay,
But I don't think you
no,
throw
no.
all the issues under the bus that
We're not
they
talking
are
about the
badly
issues.
trying to solve.
And this is what I've been trying to
We
explain
should try
to
to
you.
solve those issues.
We
We
will.
care about
We
those
will
issues
absolutely
and do
solve
them.
these issues, but we won't do it through social justice methods. This is what I'm saying. The procedures of social justice. No, don't.
You were
no,
defining
listen.
social justice.
You're not listening,
All right.
right? The procedures of social justice are unacceptable in civilized society.
We're a monolith. All of us are the exact same person who think the exact same things. When Sargon sees a video by me, or by anyone else that I've associated with or know on the topic of social justice, his mind instantly closes because he has come to believe his own bullshit. His head is so up his ass, he is so convinced of his own correctness about everything to do with the topic of social justice that he cannot compute that anybody would have a nuanced position or view on social justice or any of the issues around social justice, progressivism, etc., if they have a kind of fundamental disagreement about the parameters of the problem of social justice warriors and triggered leftists and offended people who just want to censor everything, etc.
I'm a 16-year-old and I can't have this baby. Think you should keep it?
It's a baby. Yeah. If someone was raped and she gave birth and she decided to kill her 3-year-old child.
I meant to get your phone!
So they sit down and have this conversation, and basically Richard Carrier is like, I have my own ideas about what social justice is. I think social justice is about actually trying to help people, you know? It's like fighting for abortion rights. It's about going into poor neighborhoods and trying to help people with that. It's like trying to provide healthcare and education, all of these different issues. It's about acknowledging inequality and acknowledging that racism can occur against minorities that actually negatively impacts their lives. And Sargon is basically like, no, Richard, no, shut up. Shut up, Richard. Shut up. Shut up and listen. No, shut up.
Don't worry about the welfare of our fellow citizens. We can't even have a proper conversation if social justice is the hegemonic rule set. We can't have these discussions. The only reason listen, right? No, you can't. No, we can't. Don't give me that crap, right? The only reason, that is absolute crap, and you know, right? The only shut up. The only reason we can have these conversations is because these guys at Mythicist did not back down.
But we agree on the goal. You just don't think we can get there.
No, I don't think you can get there.
Oh, okay, how are you going to get there?
Oh, I'm not. I'm going to destroy it.
Well, that's the same thing. So, how? No.
I am going to tear it up. Richard, shut up and let me talk for 5 seconds.
How are you going to destroy it?
Shut up.
How are you going to destroy it?
Shut up.
Answer the question.
Shut up.
How are you going to destroy it?
I'm not answering any of your questions.
You're just avoiding.
Hold on.
Stop interrupting me and I'll tell you what I'm going to say.
Let's keep it civil, please.
Yeah. Okay, this ideology has to go. The fundamental contradiction...
How?
Why
I agree it has to go. How?
Why are you interrupting me? Why can't you let me finish a sentence? Because you know that
you're
what I'm
just
going to say
repeating- you
is
just
going to
keep
box you in
repeating
a place
yourself.
where you know you're fucked. That's why.
Look.
That's it. I'm not going to say any more.
Okay.
In respect for your father,
September
as a
14th,
porter,
do you want to know what I was doing?
Shut up.
Oh, please don't tell me to shut up.
In respect for your father, who was a Port Authority worker, a fine American, who got killed unnecessarily by barbarians.
By radical extremists trained by this government.
Respect
not
for
the
him.
People of America,
I'm not
the
gonna
people, the
address you.
ruling class, the small minority.
Cut his mic.
Social justice is mean people being mean and saying you're racist and trying to destroy your life. That's what it is. Shut up. No, shut up, Richard. And Richard being like, well, maybe I just have a different idea of what we are talking about here. Sargon, no! Social justice is a monolith. You are here to defend everything that I think social justice is. That is the only point of conversation in Sargon's world. Sargon knows everything. He is the oracle on all of these topics. He can read the mind of anybody who disagrees with him on social justice, and social justice is this thing. He just asserts that over and over and over again. It is this, it is this, it is the people that I don't like.
Stop talking and I'll explain it to you if you like.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
Sure. Right. So, yeah, sure. Social justice comes out of postmodernism, right? Postmodernism, I think, is most attributable to Foucault and Marcuse. And Marcuse literally said, what this is designed to do is to confer a certain spirit of Marxism into social activism, because socialism fails everywhere it goes, right? The problem that we have is the dichotomy that social justice views the world under. There is an oppressed class and an oppressor above them, and it is just to hate your oppressor. That means you are perpetuating hatred everywhere you go against the minority, against the majority for the minority.
All right. Now I can't give links right here.
Then
But I've
don't
got,
bring it up.
I
if you
have
can't back it
several,
up.
I can show you numerous examples of social justice activists who would repudiate what you just said and say that they don't agree with that
Why
view.
can't you do it?
He's so fucking offended that anybody could have a different opinion about social justice at all. And this is as somebody who's like, look, I don't even really know what Richard Carrier's beliefs are. He seemed like a thoughtful individual on these topics, putting aside anything about, I don't know, the problematic nature of what he may have done in his life. He was like a reasonable person, and Sargon was just an entitled, crying, moaning, triggered bitch just a fucking crybaby. Ignorance, stupidity, inability to read, creation of a fan base which is up his ass almost as much as he is, are the defining factors in any conversation about social justice, and being presented with somebody who has a nuanced position makes him go completely, absolutely berserk. His view is that anybody who's for social justice is evil, is a terrible person, that they believe in the cult of intersectionality. The only thing they care about is destroying people like Sargon of Akkad for like being racist or what have you. That nobody in social justice actually cares about any issues that impact anybody in the entire world. The only thing they care about is doing and performing acts of satanic evil. It is absolutely his guiding light. He is a rabid, narrow-minded thinker on this topic who cannot be reasoned with. He gets constantly offended at people having different opinions than him on this topic. And I've had issues with MythCon, but I think at least they had some panels where people were able to have some rational discussions about these topics. Friends Chris Ciosity, Mike Rollins, and Vadim Newquist went, and although the crowd was against them, they did a good job of arguing their points and having conversations.
I have absolute respect for Music Man Mike and Chris Ciosity for coming here and discussing this, but they are hardly the best and brightest that social justice has to offer.
Right?
And I don't know. No. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. They would say that themselves, right?
Yeah, they're not right. They admit they're amateurs.
I mean, I'm not the best and brightest that I do.
But a great point of criticism for me about MythCon is that they invite someone like Sargon, who is like, his brain is empty. All he can do is strawman. Throughout the conversation, it was like he was trying to recruit the audience into being on his side and be like, rah, rah, yeah.
You tried to claim that I'm rare and there aren't others like me.
No, you're a minority.
I'm refuting that point.
You're an oppressed minority.
When you look at professional... No, look.
Yes,
when you look at professional social justice activists who aren't amateur internet people...
What, like Linda Sussel?
I don't care about that. I'm talking about the ones that I would look at. When you go looking for real...
your preferred ones.
With these little snippets and sound bites that he keeps throwing out there, instead of listening to anything that Richard Carrier was actually saying.
They've talked to people.
There's no
when
evidence
people
that
object
social
to this,
justice activism reduced the population, the audience of the Reason Rally, that was the cause of that.
Are you
That's
kidding
just
me?
a leap
that
of
happens
assumption.
In every community. There is a
But you don't have any evidence of that causation. You're just assuming that's the cause. This is
been
what I don't
there.
like about your work.
I was in this.
But that doesn't...
My lived experience is suddenly not relevant.
No.
All of these people's lived experience is
not what I
suddenly not
said.
relevant.
This is what I don't like about you.
Oh, I don't care what you don't like about me.
You were straw-manning me.
Off the stage then.
No, look what you do. You keep straw-manning me. You keep ignoring the things I'm saying and saying I'm saying I'm not what I'm saying. I'm saying the opposite of what that is.
You are here to defend social justice.
There's a few points I want to bring up in regards to this specific conversation that they were... Well, conversation... Trainwreck that they were having. First is on the issue of the individual versus the collective, which is very interesting because it's kind of analogous to the way Sargon's mind works in regards to advocates of social justice. Sargon puts social justice advocates into a collective whereby anybody who says that they are for the idea of social justice necessarily believes the same things as basically everybody else. Because he says they are collectivists, which means that they necessarily have to think that way. If I say I'm for social justice, I have to think the same things as everybody else in social justice because we are collectivists. That is just the way that we roll.
How can you have group justice?
What do you mean by group justice?
Well, that's your point. That's social justice. What is it?
Abortion access for a group of people called women.
Yeah, but what about women who don't want that? What about women who find abortions to be morally reprehensible and want you to stop?
Yeah, we have to work against them to get abortion rights for women.
So we're not doing this for women. We're doing this for a certain set of political ideologies.
Wait a minute. Are you now advocating? Are you seriously advocating that you think we should support limiting access to abortion?
I'm not advocating shit. I'm pointing out you are not the representative of women.
What is your view on this, on abortion then?
I'm not just addressing my view on abortion. It really doesn't matter what it is.
Because what you just said suggests that you
Stop
support...
changing the subject.
No, I'm on
the topic
subject.
of this
the subject is social justice. Abortion is a social justice issue.
The topic.
This is a relevant
We're not
topic.
talking about social justice issues. We're talking about what social justice does.
I don't think that Sargon is a collectivist. Obviously, he's an individualist. But that doesn't mean that he is not part of a collective in some way. That's just reality. He automatically is. Just by being a member of the human race and society at large, there is an aspect to Sargon's life that is not individual. He may hold the individual as the absolute highest goal to attain as a kind of dogmatic, almost religious style belief. Like, I don't really like attributing religious belief to things that aren't religions, but it is very dogmatic for him. the individual, but no amount of worshipping the idea of the individual will impact whether he is subject to collectivism, because he is. He may want to resist that, he may be against it, and based on that he's not a collectivist. I won't strawman him about it. But his inability to understand that there is a collective element to the world and to humans, it's a vulnerability that shows just how stubborn and hard-headed he is. He can't admit to just a basic fact, because I don't know why, like it makes him feel insecure or something? Okay, now I'm gaslighting. I don't know why. Because he's a fucking moron, maybe. As somebody who is automatically a collectivist in every possible way, and I can't change that, I'll still pointlessly give my position on the individual versus the collective, which is that the individual is necessary for humans. Like, it has to be part of the equation of society. You cannot have a functioning democracy, you cannot have a functioning world without the individual. However, as much as individualism and collectivism may be opposing viewpoints, the individual and the collective are not opposing things. They are co-occurring and sometimes complementary concepts, because as an individual, I am an individual, Sargon is an individual, everybody is an individual who has individual elements and aspects to them which makes them who they are in our society. As individuals, we function inside something which is a collective, which is our human world, the shared values which we may have with other humans. The idea that we should have working sanitation and be able to walk down the road without saying, this is an evil collectivist road here, my taxes paid for this is just evil social justice right here, please destroy this road. ANCAPs disagree with that because they are just insane, but even just Sargon's idea that there should be democracy, or that we should be liberals, have tolerance for different points of view and different ways of being, that is in part a collectivist mentality, because you are saying that these are kind of values that humans should share. Individualism as a value you should share with other humans is a somewhat collectivist mindset. You're not just saying, I'm the only one who gets to be an individual. You're saying people in the world should get to be individuals. That should be a shared value. So objectively speaking, I am not a collectivist. I'm not necessarily an individualist. I believe that they are necessary concepts. And I believe at times, yes, collective interest can override individual interest, obviously. If there's people who are trying to hold back people from, say, voting, should those individuals be overwritten, perhaps, so that everyone should have access to voting? Yes, I think they should. The idea of providing healthcare to individuals, like, that's one of my values as a progressive. People who think that we shouldn't provide healthcare to everybody, would I mind their individual interest of just not liking that being overridden in a democratic way? No, I wouldn't mind that. But at other times, so long as it's not causing danger to others, do I think people should be able to put whatever they want into their own bodies? Should they have autonomy over their own bodies? Should they have free speech? Should they be able to express themselves as individuals? Should they have the right to their own sexuality? All of these different things? Absolutely. So in those areas, I am totally individualist. I'm not an individualist. I'm not necessarily a collectivist. I'm just not scared of some of these concepts like somebody like Sargon is, who is just thinks that collectivism is automatically Mao, automatically Stalin, automatically evil, because he has indoctrinated himself with his own bullshit. And that sort of entitled intellectual authoritarianism came out a lot during this conversation with Richard Carrier, because he's like, no, you have to be collectivists. There's no other option. So anything Sargon has to say is self-evidently true. It's self-evidently backed up, because they will say, well, the shoe's on the other foot now. I'm treating you collectively because that's the kind of thing you do. Because that's the kind of person you are. That's what you believe. I'm using your beliefs against you. And that is a big trope in political conversations to do with the left. If I'm pro-feminism, I'm automatically a collectivist. And I think that when Sargon comes to conversations with anybody about that kind of thing, that is the assumption that he brings to the table. So if any advocate for these things he disagrees with has a position that is outside his idea of what position should be, his mind goes berserk. He cannot function under the idea that people have different opinions. If he heard me talk right now, he would be filtering it through his idea of what social justice people think. He can't hear what I have to say. His mind is just completely shut. He doesn't give a shit if there's any nuance on something. Like an interesting point in the conversation, Sargon said, what do you think racism is?
Define racism for me.
When there's discrimination against someone for their race, perceived race, skin color.
You're not an intersectional social justice warrior. That's not the correct...
See, that's the thing.
Yeah, of course.
No.
That's not the definition of racism.
Sargon's just like, but you can't think that. You know, you're a social justice person. You all have to think the same thing. You're a collective. You know, me, Sargon, is a rational genius individualist. I'm allowed to have my own thoughts, but my opponents are not allowed to think different things. And that is the way that he approaches these conversations. I would have said, yeah, racism is in fact, discrimination based on somebody's skin color. I agreed with Richard Carey's definition, because I think, like, Japanese people can be racist against Chinese people. Black people can be racist against white people. I believe that. And Sargon would just be like, how do you think something different than the straw man that I've spent years developing on my channel? That's impossible. You cannot have a different view. But then I would add, I also think that the power dynamics do play a role. That the power dynamics in that racism equation adjust how significant it is as a societal issue, not on an individual basis. Like, on an individual basis, racism is always wrong. But when you put it at a society level, it changes the degree of influence it has on the society. And then Sargon would say, aha, gotcha, you are an SJW. Yeah, you collectivist, feminist, feminazi. Crushed and owned. But in doing that, he would have to ignore that I also fully acknowledge that racism is also hatred based on skin color. A black person could be racist against me, in my worldview. I would think that, depending on the power dynamic of that situation, I might not care about it, you know? If a black person on the internet was racist against me, I'd shrug it off, I wouldn't care. If a black cop was racist against me, there'd be a different power dynamic, and then that might be more of a problem. That wouldn't necessarily say how much that occurs on a societal level, but it would be a different power dynamic, because that person is in a position of power. Like, these things are not that complicated for me, yet it makes Sargon's mind just go haywire to encounter opinions by people he disagrees with that don't conform to his narrow view, because he has spent years cultivating this narrow view. That is the exact parameters of his world position, and it cannot be challenged, it cannot be changed. So Richard Carrier, coming from a different perspective, is basically just like Sargon melts into a puddle and all he has is straw manning, all he has is bullying, all he has is trying to get the crowd on his side, because he's a pathetic bully. I don't think that he could even really say what intersectionality was, because he's so convinced of a straw man of it that to him it's just like a cult, feminism is a religion, social justice equals social justice warrior, you have to drink their tears. The only thing you can do is drink their tears, you have to own the libs, it's the only option in life. He has to say, this is your argument, this is what you believe. His only method in debates is telling people what they believe. And everybody can transparently see you are not approaching somebody else's argument. You're not actually looking at what they believe. You're just saying, my idea of what you believe is what you believe. There is no other alternative. And that's because he sniffs his farts like a maniac. He is addicted to his own farts. He is a stunning example of Dunning-Kruger effect. Like, his belief in his own knowledge and his own aptitude is completely out of whack with his weak cry-bully tactics and inability to understand anybody's argument besides his own, and the argument of his own that he believes is just a ridiculous bizarre land version of everything. Like, it's just an embarrassment to watch. He is kind of like intellectually an authoritarian. It's basically his way or the highway. You're not allowed to have different opinions, otherwise you're a liar, you're disingenuous. There are a few aspects of this conversation which were ironic, such as when Sargon said, oh, you know, Thomas Smith last year at MythCon, he was all triggered and offended. Let's acknowledge that Richard Carrier is not storming off and he's not offended. Like, I don't know what the thing that binds Thomas Smith and Richard Carrier is together, except, again, Sargon's collectivization of anybody who disagrees with him on social justice. Obviously, Carrier necessarily has to be like Thomas Smith because of the monolith thing again, so he offered this just condescending, fucking dickhead douchebag compliment. Oh, well done, you're not a different guy.
And I do genuinely appreciate that you're not Thomas Smith, and you know, yeah, come on, guys, come on. Come on. Look.
And I was like, yay, Richard Carrier is a different person. Yeah, like, no shit. But that was also incredibly ironic to me because Sargon accidentally acknowledged that social justice advocates can be different people, which I think goes against his entire ideology. Because it's clear from that conversation that's not what he believes. He basically believes that all of us are the same person. We all think the exact same things. The entire thing was just a total mess until about an hour 15 or so through it, when they actually started talking about some issues to do with social justice, and Sargon started talking about how the problem with the black communities is that the black family's broken up, and he talked about Thomas Sowell's idea on that, which, you know, it's all about the black family.
Now we have a social justice issue of poverty, where now we're saying the poor are pulled over more.
Yeah. Okay, why are black people poor?
Well, no. Well, let's just go right to poverty. Now, okay, you've now claimed that poverty is the issue, not race.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So now we've got a social justice issue that we can agree on and we can work on.
Why are
to
black
solve.
people poor?
Well, that's a whole other discussion.
I think it's actually quite easily explainable.
Well, are you going to cite scientific papers that study
Absolutely.
and confirm it? Okay.
Well, I'm going to cite books by academics, please.
Okay. Oh, yes. Give me a book title.
Sure. Wealth, Poverty, and Politics.
Okay. And that has scientific studies in it that's cited?
Oh, yeah. So one of the top economists.
Okay. I'll look into that. See, maybe I'll do a blog on it.
Have you never heard of it?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I know Equality Science. That's the book that I go to, because that's the leading book on
Okay, that's great. So we can actually talk about the reasons that this happens, right? So the problem, I think, all comes down to fatherlessness in black communities.
Oh, you're talking about poverty, right? I get you.
Yeah, but no, not just poverty, but that's one major contributing factor to poverty.
And saying that racism was actually beneficial in some way to minorities and black people because the black family kept together during that period.
If anything, it seems that racism was a causal factor in reducing the crime and poverty in the black community. If you look at graphs, you can see over time that after the introduction of what was the big society, LBJ's big society, where the welfare state was instituted, the destruction of the black family follows almost immediately. And then 10, 15 years later, the crime rates skyrocket as a bunch of feckless single children have got no role models, no leadership. But if you look prior to that, the marriage rates are virtually identical to white people, and the crime rate is virtually identical too. Racism, ironically, was actually good for the black community in this regard. Now, I know that someone's going to be like, oh my God, he thinks racism is good for black people. That's
I think
not
it's
what
a
I'm
bit
saying.
of a leap of logic.
No, it's not. It's absolutely, it's demonstrable, right? This is the problem. And now, I'm not saying, obviously, that's a good idea, but what I'm saying is there is a problem that hits at that point, and we can see on the graphs it changing. So we need to deal with that. But it's not the fact that it was racism, because racism had the opposite effect. Now, I'm not suggesting we go back to racism, but we need to actually be able to analyze these actual issues without crying structural racism, because procedurally there isn't anything wrong. Anyone who does, like, say, walk around with a gun and commits loads of crimes, they're going to jail. It's just disproportionately these people are coming out of black communities, and they're disproportionately coming out of these communities because of the family problems there.
On that, I think it's secondary to the kind of our whatever total shit show garbage that occurred, but it seemed that Richard Carrier was like, okay, we're actually finally talking about something to do with social justice. You know, Sargon thinks that is the explanation, that the black family broke up and that, you know, racism was beneficial in some way. Okay, well, I mean, I don't agree with that, but that is actually a position which can be discussed, and it took Sargon like an hour something to come up with a single fucking point that people could actually talk about. Because all he wanted to do was just beat up Richard Carrier. That was the only thing he cared about. Also, one moment showed that Sargon only cares about gotchas. That's what he's going for. I know that as a social justice warrior, I have the monopoly on gotchas. My side of the gotcha people. Sargon couldn't possibly do a gotcha just by definition because he's an anti. And they couldn't do that. But for the sake of some sort of alternative universe argument, let's say that Sargon could definitionally do a gotcha.
So every pro-life person I've talked to, they're worried about the personhood of the developing human. If men could get pregnant, do you think pro-life people would be okay with men having abortions? And if not, then why do you call it a women's rights issue?
Oh, I see. Well, in this hypothetical alien planet you're talking about, it wouldn't be. It's only a women's issue precisely because of the fact that the women are the only ones who can have this issue.
That seems rather transphobic.
Oh, good point. No, thank you.
But
yes,
no,
I should.
but at least.
I should. No, actually, I should acknowledge
you shouldn't,
this.
because you're not an intersectional social justice.
No. But I believe in this particular aspect of social
nice
justice. This is a social justice activism I believe in. Mm-hmm. He's right. I should mention that there are, of course, trans men who can get pregnant. And that does matter. There actually are issues related specifically to trans men in having access to pregnancy care and abortion care. And that's a real social justice issue, too.
Ooh, isn't that a little bit transphobic? gotcha, man, you're transphobe, because don't you know that trans men can get pregnant? Oh, got ya. And to Richard Carrier's great credit, he just said, oh, yeah. No, good point, yes. Absolutely, I forgot about that. Thanks for correcting me. Yeah, I forgot, trans men can get pregnant. Fair enough. That's your gotcha. To me, that is like something constructive. Like, if you say that you forgot to include trans men in this equation, yeah, that's the right response. Like, oh, yeah, I did. Thanks. Like, that would be the kind of, YouTube comment that I might receive that I would say, thank you for pointing that out. But to Sargon, it's like, ooh, they would call you transphobic now. But Carrier handled that in a very classy way and just said, whoops. Alright. And if somebody wants to call Carrier transphobic based on that, it wouldn't make any sense because he acknowledged that he left them out. So that person would be being unreasonable. Problem solved. I apologize, this will be a little jarring because I'm talking about this at a different time of the day. I always forget to talk about something and then remember to talk about it later. So here it is. A long time ago, Sargon came up with this idea of Sargon's law, which was basically just the classic psychological idea of projection. It's basically, whatever you call me, that's what you are, because you're projecting. Sargon's law, which I always thought was funny because he's so uncreative. He just thinks of a basic psychological concept and says, my cat's going crazy. This idea is mine. I made this. It would be like me saying, oh, the Oedipal complex from Freud. That's mine. Tim's law. People who have issues with women are just that way because they want to have sex with their mother. That's my law. No, I just took that from somewhere else. That's not my law. That's just a psychological concept. So I always thought that was funny. The funny thing about Sargon's law, though, is it describes what he does himself. Like, his own law is projection about himself. He projects, so his law is about projecting as a way, I guess, to cover up the fact that he projects. Why do I bring this up? Because at a certain point in the conversation, he says to Richard Carrier,
how do we address the alt-right?
You tell me what you would do about the alt-right.
Well, I would just not hire them.
Not hire them?
Yes, I don't hire Nazis.
Oh, okay, but...
And I wouldn't hire feminists.
But how is that going to get rid of the alt-right? Like, you personally...
It's going to remove their
how many people do you
power.
employ? Like, you don't employ that many people yourself, so...
You don't know that.
So,
I have a channel with 800,000 people.
Practical plan. You said there's got to be, how you get there is important.
Yeah.
How do we affect this plan of yours?
Yeah, we don't hire feminists.
Who's we?
Anyone who's in a position to hire someone. It becomes a social taboo.
I
In the
see
same
what
way
you're
as
saying.
hiring Nazis.
Isn't it kind of witch hunting though? I mean, how do you even figure this out through applications?
Good question.
Yeah,
I guess you
this
can look at their
seems to
timeline on
be-
Twitter.
Yeah,
like
I
everyone does. If they're screaming, white men are the problem, no thank you.
I don't
again,
see
I'm not
any
even saying
practical way to implement that plan.
Well, how do we
don't.
keep Nazis out of our institutions?
Well,
Same method for feminists.
but it doesn't work because no one's.
It doesn't work.
Well, no one goes around wearing swastikas on their heads. So how are you going to identify
And it's
these?
amazing how many Nazis they find, though, isn't it?
So here's the problem. Well, yeah, they weren't. So this gets the whole issue of that's why that would be bad, because not all feminists are adopting the ideology they're talking about. So, just like not all people who get called Nazis are actual Nazis, right?
Okay.
You acknowledge the discrimination is there.
So, no, we're not going back to talking about discrimination, Richard. We've passed this.
And to me, that's very much the kind of social activism which he supposedly criticizes. If SJWs say, that guy's racist, that guy's homophobic, that guy's whatever, transphobic, and then try to get that person fired for stuff that they said on Twitter? I mean, come on, that would be heads exploding. That would be an atrocious thing for somebody to do. And that's not something that I advocate for. Like, I have always thought that we should try to separate, within reason, what people say in their private time on Facebook and Twitter from their employment. That's a position I've always held, although I know Sargon would not care that I hold that position. He would just tell me that I think otherwise. But I even made a video which I was criticized for, and it's perfectly fine being criticized for it, about a teacher who was found to be a white supremacist in her private life who was exposed and then fired from being a teacher. And I was wondering whether that was fair, because I didn't know what she'd actually teach in the classroom or how that would impact her role on the job. And some people said, Tim, you totally fucking sold out on this issue. Idiotic position. How dare you? Like, people are angry at me or whatever. I don't care. You know, you're entitled to your point of view. And if you don't like my position on that, that's fair enough. But I always thought, I'm not sure about that. Although I knew that it was too late because she'd already been exposed as a white supremacist. So, you know, that was just tough shit for her, really. But Sargon is advocating for going through people's feeds, trying to find out if they're alt-right in order to get them fired, and he also wants to do that with feminists, and that is like a social justice move further than I would advocate for. So it's quite fascinating. Like, I am the social justice warrior, but he's the person who wants people to get fired for their political views, which I find fascinating, and that is why he came up with Sargon's law, so that when he projects onto people, he can just say, no, I think that's a bad thing, I've got a whole law about it. It was kind of an enlightening part of the conversation in terms of the extreme hypocrisy of this guy. Total fucking hypocrite, who apparently is more of an SJW activist than I am. I just thought it was funny. Also, Sargon disproved his own point about social justice partway through the conversation when MRAs were brought up, and he made Richard Carrier agree that MRA as a term might have been unfairly maligned because of individuals who call themselves MRAs, but it's not necessarily a bad thing to be a men's rights activist.
Also, your beliefs on identity politics mirror the alt-right's beliefs on identity politics.
Well, give me an example.
Yeah, they're for white people.
Wait, what?
They're for white identity politics.
Give me an example of white identity politics that you're talking
Collective bargaining power for the white race.
about. I see.
Like Black Lives Matter, or the collective bargaining power for the black
Let me think
race.
if I can find an example there.
It's okay if you don't want to take this seriously.
Let's do men and women.
But this is something that's really damaging our
I can't
civilization.
think one based on race, but let's think of an example that matches what you're looking at
Sure.
for men and women.
Sure.
So men have a hugely higher suicide rate than women do. And so I do agree that men as an identity have an issue there that we should care about and work to solve.
So would you describe yourself as a men's rights activist?
Well, see, the thing is, what happens with that term, and this is exactly what the left does, and I used to do this too, so I apologize for having done it in the past, is assuming that that label refers to everybody who's advocating for these ideas, right? Because people have this idea of an MRA in their head.
Again,
They have this sort of weird bugbear in their head of this sort of extremist MRA, right?
I wonder where that came from.
Right. No, I agree. This is a problem. And I'm not on that train anymore.
Anymore?
Yeah, because I was naive about the use of the terminology. Great. Now there are...
No, come on.
Yeah. No, there are MRAs who are bad actors, just as there are SJWs who are bad actors. Sure. They have really bad ideas or wrong facts and so on. And this is a truth. Totally. But there are legitimate men's rights issues. And there are legitimate organizations that work for them. You have like the Movember movement, for example. And so yes, I think that is a legitimate example. And I think it would be, I think I would consider it a logical trick, basically, if an SJW would say, well, you're just an MRA then, and then attribute to me all the other bad ideas that they attribute to MRAs, when in fact that's not the case. I don't share those.
They're using it as a smear, aren't they?
Correct, but they use it as a smear because they assume that if you have one particular view, that you share all these other views, right?
I don't think that's the reason. I think that they're using it as a smear because what they see as men are the oppressive group in society. They believe that men hold the reins of power in society, and they think that men operate in the same way that feminists operate, which is group identity politics for women. And they assume that men operate like that already, and that's why the world is as it is. But procedurally, that's not how this happened. Again, every individual got to their station on their own and made the decision to get there on their own. This is the difference.
Without noticing that conceding that completely destroyed his own point about social justice, that you shouldn't judge social justice just based on the fact that some people who are for social justice do bad things or are people that you don't like. So Sargon debunked his own point. The only way to come back on that was just to make social justice out to be 10 times as evil as you did originally. Good job. Great debating there. So to round up this video, I think that the debate was a farce and a complete joke. I don't know why they would invite someone who's such a fucking embarrassment to the conference. He made it into a joke the previous year, and the conference actually seemed to be a lot better in general outside of this debacle. It's embarrassing to see. But I'll summarize by mentioning someone who I don't really want to mention, but I guess I do because I am, so I'm lying. I'll call her Misty Binters. Sargon believes that we are all this collective. Yet, I had a disagreement with Misty Binters, and then we fell out of favor. I kind of regret that. I wish that we could be friends again, because it all seemed a bit silly. I thought I was doing the right thing at the time. I still do, but I didn't expect that it would cause this kind of falling out. But I was part of Misty Binters' crew, or what have you. I still get comments to this day of people saying, "Ah, look, Mr. Minty Binters lover, doing her bidding. Wow, Minty was gonna get angry at you for this, angry at you for that. but I disagreed with her about something and it caused a falling out. So I'm not part of that kind of equation anymore. But like a year later or whatever, people are still going on about that. And that just illustrates the kind of collectivization that people like Sargon do to people who disagree with him. I will always be like that crew member or whatever, because it's all associations. It's got nothing to do with what an individual thinks. For the entire conversation, Sargon was just hung up on the word social justice, and Carrier summarized that perfectly. He just said, look, he's hung up on the words. He's hung up on the word social justice. That's it. Let's change it to something else so that he's not so offended all the time. And that was the whole debate. They didn't even need to have the conversation. Like, somebody could just come out and say, all right, guys, so for this last moment, we were just going to have a conversation. Sargon gets offended about the words social justice for an hour or something. That's what it was going to be. You don't even need to see it. That's it. Have a good rest of the conference. That's what they could have done. They didn't even need to have the fucking conversation. But that is basically the approach to all of these issues. And decide for you what you think. I can just appeal to this rabid audience that I've created of people who agree with everything that I say all the time, because it's just what I've conditioned them to do. And at another point, Richard Carrier disagrees with a woman, and Sargon's like, oh, disagreeing with a woman, wow, you know, you're not allowed to do that. But I've done the same thing. I've disagreed with women. I've disagreed with trans people. I've disagreed with people of all stripes, because I never said that you couldn't. I don't believe that you can't disagree with anybody. I do think that, depending on the context of your disagreement, you might need to like couch it in different ways, or think about creative ways of approaching those disagreements. But who has said that you cannot disagree with somebody? I know social justice advocates say we should give more of a voice to certain identities of people, and you can take issues with that, like the progressive stack. But that's not the same as saying we have to agree with everything everybody says at all times of those identities or of those groups. And I would also say that also doesn't mean that when you disagree with those people, you should just be obnoxious and insulting and, you know, repulsive about it, but just like fair-minded and polite, open-minded. What the hell is wrong with those things? Again, it's that straw man. I disagree with like Dave Rubin and Milo Yiannopoulos or whatever, and they're gay, and that's more of a minority group than me who's straight. So when have I or Carrier ever said such things? Overall, I mean, I don't know if I'll invite Sargon back again, but I would just say it's kind of hurting your brand, because he is an embarrassment to the whole conversation, and he's embarrassed himself in so many conversations and so many debates that it's just getting ridiculous at this point. He was even too embarrassing for UKIP. Now that's embarrassing. Anyways, I just want to get that off my chest, because watching this conversation, I was like, I cannot believe people think this guy is intelligent, or that he has anything useful to say. I think with the MythCon guys, it is a lot about popularity, because when I talked to them, they kept saying he's got a big audience and he's popular. And so I guess that's just the way of approaching it. If someone's popular, got a big audience, it's what it's all about. So he's probably guaranteed a platform there many years in advance. The rest of us will be cringing along, including I think many of his fans, just like, what the fuck? But they'll still follow him in lockstep, because that's the environment he's created. A herd mentality. Anyways, see you soon. And I hope you enjoy my next video. I put a lot of work into it. Cheers.
If you produce a good evidence-based video that just no, seriously, it has criticism and an alternative solution proposed.
Oh.